Today I'm gonna change the glow plugs out in my 1989 Jetta diesel. The reason is the glow plugs wear out every couple years or so, depending on how many times you started, and it usually doesn't show up until winter time. I'm going to replace them, but the problem is they're buried behind the injectors and the injector lines, which I'll have to remove so I can get the glow plugs out. What I'm going to do is pull the injectors out and test them all and check them. It hasn't been that long since I've done that. That's probably about 40,000 miles back. The injector nozzles service life is between about, in my experience, between 40 and about 90,000 miles between needing serviced. And I'll do all that today. So the first thing I'm going to do is, one, I'm going to pull the return lines. These are the return lines. They return the fuel back to the tank, through the injectors, back to the tank. Second, I'm going to pull the injector fuel lines. These are the fuel lines, the high pressure injector lines that deliver fuel from this injection pump. Then I'm going to pull the injectors, and then I'm going to replace the glow plugs. And then after that, we'll check the injectors, change out nozzles if we need to, and put them back in. Before we do anything, we put on our protective rubber gloves because we don't want to smell like diesel fuel the rest of the day because it gets in your skin and it stinks. Plus, I like these gloves. They're orange. Not my favorite color, but I like them because they look cool. First thing we're going to do, pull the injector lines, the return lines I mean. The return lines are off. Next, we're going to pull the injector lines off. Before I do that, I'm going to stuff a rag up under them so the diesel fuel doesn't leak down on the radiator hoses, because diesel fuel is a powerful solvent and it will tend to dissolve those. So you always want to be careful about that too. $17mm wrench. You loosen the bottom ones first, that way you're not having diesel fuel drip all over your hands when you take them apart. Keep your threads real clean and smooth, because you don't have much of a turning radius on there and you have to pull them off with your finger. And do not over tighten them when you put them back on. That leaves me one more that's hard to reach. Alright, now to take the tops off. Diesel engines don't have spark plugs. In the spark plug hole, they put injectors. Below the spark plugs, they put glow plugs. The fuel is ignited by compression, not sparks. Yeah, this is the injector lines. Set those to the side so we won't lose them. For those of you who are new at the game, this is an injector socket. It's a 27mm socket with the side cut out of it. This makes it easier to pull the injectors out. This is an injector. We're going to set that to the side and check it later. Injector 2 is dry where the first one was all oily and wet. That's a sign of trouble. And that looks normal. Dry. The next thing we checked is to see how the glow plugs work. But the best way to do is to pull the injectors out of the engine, turn it on, and see how quickly they all light up. And even that sometimes can be a little misleading. I've had them only fail when it's really cold outside. Some of them won't light. So I'm going to replace them all anyway because they're kind of a pain in the neck to get to. So we're just going to start clean with those today. So that's what I'm going to do next, is pull the glow plugs out and replace them. This is the bus bar. Number 4. Then in reverse order, Back in they go. Like I said, it's a little unwieldy getting it in there. Sometimes you wonder when they design these things what they were thinking. The tricky part's going to be getting the bus bar and stuff like that back in there. And those little tiny nuts on the end are a bit of a small wrestling match to get on without dropping them. Well, that concludes the glow plug phase. Now the next thing we're going to do is test our injectors. Running without the air conditioning on one of these cars in highway speed 65 to 70 should yield you around 48 miles to gallon on average, maybe 47. This car has dropped down to 43 and 44, which makes me suspect an injector. So we've got the glow plugs changed and we're going to test the injectors, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. This is an injector pop tester. Injector number 1. This one doesn't look like it's having any issues. Tighten it on there, snug it up, and then we pump it up. And the opening pressure is actually low on this one. And the spray pattern is so-so. We'll set that one aside, it's a little low. We'll check number 4 and see what the deal is with that, why it looks so ugly. Now it has a good spray pattern. The other one did not. I don't know if you can hear that. It should be a good even spray pattern. It should be between them two marks right there. Alright, even though it has a little oil on it, I don't know what that's about. This one actually passes. Number 1 failed. Number 4, the oily one, looks fine. Down to number 3. Spray pattern could be better. Let's see what the opening pressure is. Opening pressure's low on this one too. So we pull it out and mark it down for repair. Number 2 cylinder. Spray pattern could be a little better, but it's within limits. Let's see what the and of course the opening pressures are way low on that too. So we've got some work to do here today. We'll have to lay out a clean field here to work on, because you don't want to get dirt inside the injector, otherwise they all misbehave. This is an injector. It has 2 halves, top and the bottom, and inside are the working parts. Put your little rag there so don't dribble diesel everywhere. There you go. Take them out of the vise, and we will open up the injector. Side. This is the nozzle. This is the part that wears out. And here is the spring, and on the inside there's a shim in there, believe it or not. And that's what you change out to control your opening pressures. And then very carefully screw them back together and make sure they don't bind. Got it? Put it in the vise. Over to the pop tester. This one actually passes. Time to put the injectors back in. Can't need any heat gun out. That completes that job. We got it done. It starts and runs a lot easier. Got the glows in it. Got the injectors all up to snuff. So we're good.